because the jail's hot, so they didn't turn the AC on.
7:02. Whenever you're ready, Lindsay, you ready?
All set.
It's okay.
Everyone's ready?
Comfortable with that.
Everyone's ready? Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's regular meeting of the Woburn City Council of May 7, 2024. Just a reminder to everyone, tonight's meeting is being recorded for broadcast. Also, I please ask you to silence all your cell phones. If you are able to, please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk Higgins, if you call the roll.
Counsel Campbell.
Present.
Counsel Demers.
Present.
Counsel DeMambro.
Present.
Counsel Ferrullo. Absent. Counsel Mercer Bruin.
Here.
Counsel Papalato.
Present.
Counsel Toro.
Present.
Counsel Viola.
Present.
President Dillon.
Present.
Make a motion that we dispense with the reading of the previous meeting's journal and approve.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Mr. President, if I could
Yes.
take a minute of personal privilege.
Yes, sir.
This week, as we're all aware, it is National Teacher Appreciation Week, National Nurses Week, and National Correctional Officers Week. So we just wanted to say thank you to all of them and for everything they do for our community and for everybody. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Viola.
First item we have on the agenda is an order that the sum of $255,000 be transferred from Mayor Salary Adjustment Account to Woburn High School WHMS Teachers' Salaries Account.
Make a motion the matter be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Second.
The motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Next item on the agenda is an order that the sum of $2,053,000 be transferred from Fire BLS Ambulance Account to various fire department accounts.
Make a motion that we send that off to the Committee on Finance.
Second.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Next item on the agenda is an order relative to the electricity community aggregation under Mass General Law, Chapter 164, Section 134.
Make a motion that we refer that to Committee on Liaison.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
First item on the new petitions is New England Orienteering Club for a special event permit for a map and compass sport event at Horn Pond Parking Lot in Arlington Road on August 25th, 2024, with request for waiver of umbrella liability insurance.
Make a motion we refer that to the Committee on Public Safety and License.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Next item on the agenda is a petition for renewal of taxi cab license for Woburn Cab Company at 100 Ashburton Ave.
Make a motion the matter be referred to the Committee on Public Safety and License.
Second.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Next item is petition for renewal of livery license for Harmony Transportation, Inc. at 8 Con Street.
Make a motion that we refer that to Committee on Public Safety and License.
Second.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Next item on the agenda is a petition by 8-10 Green Street LLC requesting an extension of special permit at 0 Green Street and 8-10 Green Street until July 30th, 2026. A communication dated April 23rd, 2024 was received from Attorney Joseph R. Tarby.
I'll make a motion that we receive all communications, make it part of the permanent record, and suspend the rules to allow the petitioner or their representative to speak.
Second.
So motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
That passes. How are you tonight, Attorney Tarby?
I'm doing great, thank you. For the record, Attorney Joseph Tybee, Woburn and Redmond, 500 Unicorn Park Drive in Woburn, here on behalf of 8-10 Green Street LLC, requesting an extension of the special permit to July 30 of 2026. Just to go back in time here, the special permit was originally issued on July 30th, 2020, for 56 residential units, of which 8 are required to be affordable. As you know, on March 15, 2020, COVID hit, and for a 3-year period of time, there was a lot of uncertainty with supply issues and just general development. Since that time, we're now running into an issue with high interest rates. For example, today, the interest rates are around 7.55 to 7.66, and people just aren't buying properties as they have been. So we're looking for another 2-year extension in order to exercise the rights under the special permit.
Any questions for Attorney Tarby? Yes, Councilor Papalato.
I know the climate is tough. I personally have same situation where I try to build something, the prices got out of whack, and I held, so I totally get that. I have got a couple of neighbors' concerns about keeping the lot clean and keeping it up to speed, and from everything I've heard, you've jumped right on it and fixed it. But what I would ask is that if you could be proactive down there so that the calls subside, and a quarterly basis, just take a look, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but it needs to be in an acceptable range for the bordering neighbors.
Anyone else? Yes, Councilor Toro.
Thank you. Attorney Tarby, similar to what Councilman Papalato said, driving through there all the time, just keeping that clean. It could probably use another cleanup real quick, some trash in there, and the owner did weed whack things. It was overgrown for a while, so it looks a little bit better, but we can clean it up a little bit, get through there with some, maybe someone to pick up some of the trash and give it another run through. That would be great. And again, as Councilor Papalato said, just consistently monitoring it, because it does get overgrown relatively quick, and, driving down there all the time, it's an eyesore if it's not maintained.
Okay, understood. Yep.
Anyone else? Yes, Councilor Campbell.
I would like to talk about the same thing. Honestly, it's looked a mess for a long time. I did notice that I drove by the other day and they had weed whacked the area. But I'm thinking it needs to be a once-a-month thing, because especially with the summer taking place, everything's going to be growing quickly, and it was an extreme eyesore, especially for the neighbors that were living abutting that property. So I will vote for this tonight for the extension, but I want assurance that that property, the weeds, the weed trees and everything else will stay down to the ground as much as possible, not where it was. I mean, it was just left, to do whatever it was going to do, and it really was a mess.
Right, well, Mr. Gailey just indicated that would happen.
Okay,
So.
thank you. That's it.
Yes, Councilor Bruin.
President Dillon, I don't know if it's appropriate or not, but can the extension of the permit be conditioned that the property will be maintained properly, including the landscaping?
Is that in the form of a motion?
I'll make it in the form of a motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second that, absolutely.
All in favor?
Aye.
That passes. So, what's the will of the council?
May I just ask a clarifying? The property may be maintained in perpetuity, is that what you said?
I didn't, but I can rephrase.
Yeah, no, what did you say? I'm sorry, I was just trying to.
Properly.
That the property will be maintained, including the landscaping, on a regular basis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Darlene, for making that motion.
I'll make a motion to return to the regular order of business.
Second.
Mr. President.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
I'll make a motion that the time for the petitioner to exercise its rights under the special permit shall be extended for an additional 2-year period with the condition as outlined to July 30th, 2026.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Attorney Tarby.
Good luck.
Next item on the agenda is Veer Inc. request for extension of special permit at 6 Draper Street until May 12, 2025. A communication dated May 12, 2025 was received from Attorney James A. Giuliano.
Make a motion that the communications be received, made part of the permanent record, and that we suspend the rules to allow the petitioner or the representative to speak.
Second.
The motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes. How are you tonight, Attorney Giuliano?
Very well, Mr. President. Hello, everyone. For the record, Attorney James Giuliano Law Group on behalf of Veer Inc. We're here tonight, obviously, for a minor modification to the special permit in accordance with Section 11.12. Just to, I know there's a couple of members that were not on the board when the special permit was issued, but the first special permit was issued in October of 2022, and that was basically a special permit to allow for scientific research for testbed and superconducting power cables. If anybody has any questions, my client is here tonight to expand on that. But subsequently, in May of 2023, there was an amended special permit, which basically was a minor modification for some small changes, essentially just extending the special permit for another year. So tonight, we're here to extend that for an additional year up until 2025. My client has been doing some good research. Everything's been pretty much clean on site. We're not asking for any additional modifications, just for the extension for the 1 year. So obviously, if the council has any questions, we're happy to answer them, but that's the only thing that we're requesting tonight for the board.
Any questions? All good?
Make a motion to return the regular order of
Second.
business.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Make a motion that the time for the petitioner to exercise its rights under the special permit shall be extended for an additional year period to May 12th, 2025.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
You as well.
Next item on the agenda is under public hearings. Presentation and public comment period regarding the MBTA community's multifamily laws, new zoning requirements, and guidelines and how they affect the city of Woburn. A communication dated May 7th, 2024 was received from Quinn Lock, resident District 6.
Make a motion that we receive that and make it part of the permanent record.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes. Before we have Mayor Concanon speak, I'd just like to state, this is not a zoning amendment or zoning map amendment public hearing. That cannot happen until an actual filing, notice in paper, and to abutters, etc. This is just a presentation and public comment on the new requirements and guidelines. How are you tonight, Mayor Concanon?
I'm doing well, Mr. President. How are you?
Have the floor.
Thank you very much. And to you and members of the council, thank you very much for the opportunity to meet with you tonight. I'm joined by Planning Director John Cashel, and we're pleased to provide an update tonight on the status of our city's efforts to respond to the MBTA Communities Law. I know most of you understand where we're at, and you understand the background, but if I could, for the benefit of the public, provide just a brief background. And then at that point, I'd like to turn it over to Director Cashel to provide specifics on where we're at right now, the progress and process thus far, to answer any questions you might have, and of course, to listen to the public comment to further incorporate that into the plan that is developed. As you mentioned, Mr. President, this isn't the public hearing for any zoning change or zoning map. This is basically a public comment period and a part of the process by which we'll be able to develop the best plan forward that we could submit to the state. So just by way of background, again, most people probably know, but the MBTA Communities Act was adopted by the Massachusetts General Court, state legislature, and signed into law by Governor Baker in 2021. So it is law. This is state law that we're dealing with. And to summarize, it basically requires that communities that house MBTA stations, facilities, et cetera, are required to create an area in their city, a zone, in which certain non-age specific multifamily zoning could be built. So we are basically required to create an ordinance that demonstrates that there's a zone in the city, near Anderson essentially, in which a certain number of apartment units could be built. Our number is 2631. Each community is basically assigned a number based on the type of transportation center it has in its community. There's a series of levels, and there's numbers associated with them. Ours would be the Anderson Regional Transportation Center with a figure of 2,631 apartment units. And again, just to be clear, and you'll probably hear this said several times tonight, our community is not required to build any units. We're simply required to create a zone in which these units could be built. So again, that's the law that we are addressing. When it first came out, many of you were with me on the council. Mayor Galvin worked with us, and our first impression of that law and our first response to that law was that it was in the best interest of the city of Woburn to opt out of that law. And again, our impression, and the impression of many communities at the time, was that it was an optional process. If a community did not want to comply with the requirements of the law, the only thing in jeopardy was a small portion of state grant funding. And together with Mayor Galvin, we made a decision that the amount of money at risk as compared to the impact on our authority to zone our own community was such that we would opt out. Fairly quickly, it became apparent that it's not really optional, and that the amount of money that could potentially be lost by not complying is dramatic and potentially expanding. What we also learned after that was that non-compliance could and likely would result in a lawsuit from the state suing the city for not complying. When that began to materialize, that series of events, our community revisited the issue and indicated to the state that we would comply. And again, compliance means creating a zone and a map in which this could happen, but not necessarily ensuring that it did happen. Back then, there was a series of steps that we expected would happen. And one of those was that there would be some group effort, maybe an ad hoc committee that would be formulated to create a draft, and that draft would then be submitted to the planning board and the city council, just as every ordinance that we pass, a zoning ordinance, follows the same process. There was some starts and stops, but ultimately, late last fall, I approached the planning director at the time and asked where we stood, what steps had been taken, and how far along we were towards compliance. And we hadn't progressed very far at that point. It was at that time that the planning director advised me that she would be retiring and that I would need to appoint a new planning director. So when I did, one of the very first things we talked about was, does this person have the experience to deal with this type of issue? And could they get to work right away? And that person was John Cashel, and the answer to both questions was yes. So John immediately set about researching, using his prior experience dealing with this issue in another community, and gathering together with his team and speaking with individual members of the council and the planning board to try to formulate a game plan. So we also sought and received assistance from the MAPC, who offered their guidance through this type of process. And as we stand here tonight, what you'll hear from John is that we have the framework for a draft plan. And again, that plan will be aired tonight. We'll receive feedback from this council, from members of the public, and then those thoughts will be incorporated into a final draft plan that then gets submitted, again, to the planning board, and then the city council. And I know you know it, but so everyone knows it, what we submit as a draft plan could come out the other end of the process looking completely different, depending on the wishes of the two bodies who review this. So it's a process that we're well underway. This is an important time right now for the public to hear where we're at, for this council to provide feedback, and for us to then incorporate all that into a plan that the two bodies can deal with. So that's a summary of where we're standing right now. John has very specifics on the process, on what's been contemplated thus far, and he's certainly available to respond to any questions you might have. And again, we'll make sure we're listening intently to the public feedback as well. So unless you have any questions of me right now, I'd like to turn it over to John Cashel. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, for that great introduction. I don't really have all that much more to say. I can say that Mayor Concanon is one of the quickest learners of this particular state statute that we're dealing with. Probably nothing more significant having to do with multifamily since, 5 decades ago when the state passed 40B. And all the communities in Massachusetts had to deal with that and have successfully dealt with that particular issue for many years. I just want to talk a little bit more about 3A and how it came to be. Over COVID, the period of COVID, it was introduced and passed as legislation by the General Court and signed into law by the former Governor Baker. So it involves 177 communities, 14 cities, and the rest are municipalities. And right now, I'd say 1/3 of the 177 communities have taken action. At this point, it's mostly favorable from those communities that have dealt with it. The vast majority of the communities are dealing with it this month and into the month of June of this year. Cities that are MBTA communities have until December 31st of this year to comply with 3A. So what does it really mean, comply with 3A? I've had discussions with Lou DeNambro. I've had lengthy discussions with Darlene. I brought the planning board up to speed with everything I know about it to date. And what we've done so far, trying to bring everybody up to date with what's going on, there are several proposals for the location of the overlay district, and I do have maps of those I'll present in this presentation. We have a draft zoning ordinance, and again, it's just a draft, but it's a template draft that includes most of the language that other communities have adopted thus far and what other communities are contemplating on adopting. So it's specific ordinance language for Woburn, but it's general necessary language that all communities that are MBTA communities will have to eventually adopt, or, there's pending not legislation, but litigation involving this with several towns, and nobody knows where that's going to land or what the outcome will be. But the other thing I do have tonight, I have some handouts, and the maps are included. The draft ordinance is including the amendments for the table of uses and the table of dimensional regulations. And I do have the guidelines and statute language as they exist. I think most people have probably had a chance to read through those by this point, but if anybody would like copies of the maps and the ordinance, the draft ordinance, and the guidelines and state statute, I have those. You want me to
Can you
Yeah.
please submit those for the record?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we receive those documents and make them part of the permanent record.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes, thank you.
President Dillon? Oh, I'm sorry, that was me. I was just wondering if enough copies were made to provide for anyone in the public who would like them as well, I hope.
we'll follow up and make sure that anyone who does want them, we'll get them to them.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is very preliminary still,
Yep.
so I didn't really want to,
Mr. President, I'll make a motion that we
Oh.
have a 2-minute recess so
Okay.
Second.
Clerk Higgins can disseminate. the
Motion and a second for a 2-minute recess. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lindsay. Yeah, that's fine. You want me to help? Okay.
Thank you.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. That passes.
You took a 2-minute recess, right?
Yes, thank you.
ready?
Ready.
Okay. Just to answer Alderman Mercer Bruin's question about the public, I do have ready for a PowerPoint presentation this evening, all of the documentation that you received as members of the council. All of these materials will be made available on the planning board website, so members of the public that do want to actually see and take their time reading through this documentation that I'll present this evening, they'll have their own chance to do that.
Thank you for that.
Anybody wants hard copies, they'll be available in the planning board office.
Excellent. Thank you.
President Dillon.
Yes.
Thank you, Director Cashel, for that. I truly appreciate that. But I'd also like to ask if we could have these documents put on the city website. A lot of residents might not think to look on the planning board website. So I'd like to make that request in the form of a motion, please.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
And happy to do so.
Thank you.
So I guess to start off this presentation, so this particular aerial map shows what appears to be a primary or preliminary consensus. And the whole idea is to try to consolidate all 2,631 units of multifamily housing in the area of Anderson Station. Alderman DeNambro really took the bull by the horns early on with the review in discussing the matter with me. And I got to give credit to Alderman DeNambro for proposing this. So this is the starting point of what has been discussed so far, again, in a real non-public manner, that we want to bring into full public view. And this is the first public presentation of these maps this evening, relative to starting the discussion and deliberations on what will be the best overlay district for the city to consider. So here, that dashed circle, that represents the half-mile radius around Anderson Station. Anderson Station being the epicenter of that circle. The yellow shaded areas, this is the commuter rail line here in red. So this area outlined in yellow, you can follow the cursor here, all the way to the Wilmington line. This is what's envisioned as a 55-acre MBTA 3A non-age restricted multifamily overlay district. The minimum acreage that Woburn has to consider for adoption is 50 acres. This particular landmass here represents 55 acres. And it's primarily the Anderson Station property, both the south parking lot of Anderson Station and the north station, or the north parking lot portion of that station. Kind of ironically, we've heard recently, and I guess this has been bandied about for a number of years, the MBTA is possibly interested themselves in moving the north parking lot forward as a multifamily development. And for instance, if this does come to be, that this is the overlay district or an area of the overlay district we agree to adopt as a city, that could come right into play with what this is all about. 3A requires the multifamily housing to be within a half mile of a community's commuter rail, transit rail, major bus stations, things of that nature, those significant mass transit facilities. So this is the north parking lot here, and that's what the MBTA has made known, that they're interested in a multifamily development that would be built, not eliminating that parking, obviously, but to build over the parking lot, or that it becomes part of a superstructure of garaged parking with residents above. So that's this one area of this map. If anybody has any questions about this, so this is all along the east side of the rail line up to the Wilmington line, and it doesn't go that far east along Atlantic. It runs perpendicular with the rail line.
Councilor Papalato?
John, it looks like you've done a lot of work on this, and you're kind of the resident expert, so I have probably what to you is a rudimentary questions, but when you said that dotted circle is, what did you say, it was 50-something acres?
No, the dotted circle is, that's the radius. It's a half-mile radius.
And how many acres is that, do we know?
Well, that's 250 acres, maybe more. And part of what I'm dealing with, and I do want to mention this at this point in time before we get any further into this, the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, formerly known as DHCD, they have provided to us, the city of Woburn, at no cost, a certified expert in this stuff. It's a planning group. It's Horsley and Witten. They come highly recommended from the Executive Office, and we are working specifically with Jeff Davis. He's a principal with that planning firm, and even though he hasn't had an executed contract yet with the Executive Office, he's working with us every day and working with me, and he's, we're having a very effective working relationship email-wise, and we've had Zoom meetings to go over everything that's been done so far. So,
But that circle that you've highlighted.
Yeah.
my math says that we need about 175 acres.
That could very well be.
That, in that range of space?
Yeah, that part of the density calculation hasn't been worked out yet. That's probably going to happen within 2 weeks from now, maybe less, because we're really working rapidly on this. You know, we can go as dense as we want if we want to go high. Right now, you know, no, I'm not contemplating going above 80 feet.
Okay.
What the present zoning allows for up there is 80 feet.
Okay, the other question I had is, the mayor mentioned that we're in kind of a planning state, and to get to the end of the year, we need to have a plan.
Yeah.
Is the expectation that's gonna be, that we're gonna have to build to that plan at some point? Or are we thinking maybe we don't need to do that?
Well, that, again, Mike emphasized this in his question and answer period last week and this evening before I got up here. All we're doing, in accordance with the law, is providing for a contemplated planning area, an area that could accommodate up to 2,631 apartment units, right? But not necessarily, maybe none of them will be built, because there's no restriction on a community creating an overlay district that has development already on it.
Okay.
So that multifamily development at the corner of Atlantic in Commerce Way that just got completed, you know, that's probably not going to happen. Nobody's going to redevelop that particular site. And a lot of these lots are already developed. I'm not saying that's the end of development for any of these lots, but, you know, the idea of this statute is that we're required to produce at minimum within this particular area, Anderson Station, 75% of the 2,631 units. That's a minimum. Now, we can also, and I don't want to bring this up, but, you know, Mishawam Station is also a station in compliance with 3A criteria, but that's bringing everything further south. We don't have to do that as a community. We could concentrate all of this multifamily development density in the radius of Anderson, and once we get through crunching all the numbers, I'd say there's a good likelihood we can keep everything, if that's what the city ends up wanting to do, on the east side of the rail line. So, that's, you know, we're bringing this out tonight. We're talking about it in a preliminary manner, you know, just to break the ice on this whole thing.
Okay.
We have a lot to discuss, a lot to deliberate on, a lot to consider, because you could have multiple overlay districts too. There's no limitation other than every overlay district the city would like to adopt has to be a minimum of 5 acres, 5 contiguous acres.
Okay.
So we could have satellite overlay districts anywhere if that's what we want, but I'm not saying that, you know, but that's.
Yes, Councilor Campbell.
John, I just want to clarify, so you were saying that this particular area, it already has buildings on it. So, just like what Winchester did, how their whole area, it's actually 48 acres, it's their whole downtown.
Yeah.
That's already been developed. So that would also be similar to what we're doing here, so it's okay that the other buildings are already there. And it would be up to the property owner as to whether it would be financially feasible for them to decide, or profitable, to raise a building like that, to then make it, say, higher. Is that correct?
Exactly, 100% correct. In Winchester's particular case, you know, they do have 2 train stops.
Yeah.
Okay, so Wedgemere could be one of their locations, but they're concentrating on their downtown area. The guidelines, if you read them closely enough, the guidelines do provide that communities are supposed to look specifically at provision for pedestrian access to governmental services, educational services, and any type of retail consumer needs. You know, the ideal location for these overlay districts for many communities is their downtown area. Woburn, you know, our transit facility that qualifies is way up in the north end of town. So I know it's been quipped and about, you know, a city of Woburn, planning for a city of Woburn. It's not that we've ever planned for this. It's something that we're contemplating based on state statute mandate, which is different, you know.
Correct, a mandate, we don't have a choice.
Yeah, we don't have a choice, and it could be dire when you talk about how much revenue. They're stretching, this present governor is contemplating stretching all of state funding to municipalities that don't comply. You're not going to get any state funding, and it's hard to conceive that any community would stay in business. Plus, there's a real downside to that, and I brought this out in a planning board meeting. The state does control a lot of power on what economic development potential a city or a town is going to receive relative support from the state. So they can steer to economic activity to you or away from you. And I don't think any community that's, you know, on the opposite end of this is going to get any state support for economic development purposes. And, you know, I don't know how many towns can afford to not have economic development, especially our community.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Councilor Boone.
I just want to comment on that briefly. I understand the state has made this a mandate, and they've said, I think to use the mayor's words, dramatic and expanding what funding they won't provide to towns. I'd like to see a list of what that funding is, and I'll make that into a form of a motion, to get a list of what the funding is that we're being told we won't get.
Second.
A motion and a second, all in favor?
Also, the comment, and with all due respect, Director Cashel, there are some cities and towns that absolutely should be concerned about economic development. The city of Woburn, at the crossroads of 93 and 128, we don't even have to seek it out. It finds us, and we knew it would find us when the highway was built the way it did. Now, of course, we helped it along. We planned it under your guidance as well when you were on the planning department, and I appreciate that. And again, I'm not saying we need to, you know, run up the hill and say we won't do it. I would just like to explore a little bit more some of our options. And maybe we can talk a little bit more about them after we go through the maps. Because one of my biggest concerns with this from the very beginning is the state is asking us to solve a housing problem, but they're also saying, don't solve the housing problem. You're suggesting that people are making these maps and nothing will ever have to be built. But if I heard you correctly, no matter what, we have to build at least 75% of it, correct?
No. We have to provide for an area that allows for the potential density of up to 75% of the mandated 2,631 units.
So, okay.
But say 10 years from now, there may be, just speculating, there may be 500 or 600 of those units built within this particular overlay district.
Woburn's already getting letters from developers who are very interested in this. So I guess the only reason why I'm bringing this up, because I want to caution the council, don't just tell yourself, oh, okay, we can do this. It's never going to turn out to be what they say it's going to be. It's never going to be a big impact on our community. Just keep in mind where we are. So when we do this, people will build it. So it's up to us. It's our responsibility to make sure what they build is something we can sustain and something that makes sense. That's all I'm saying. So thank you.
And all of this is all up for discussion and deliberations. You know, this is, again, this is the first night we're really presenting all of this, so,
And thank you for that.
yeah.
All right.
And
If
want
you
me
wanna
to just show
continue.
some more, or you guys had enough?
If you have,
Yeah, please.
Mr. President, if I may,
yes.
I just have a few clarifying
I'm
questions.
sorry,
I wanted to
Councilor
ask.
Demers.
So, Director Cashel, I heard you mentioned,
Excuse me, you guys can call me John, okay?
I'll get you Director once and then John after that, how's that? So, when looking at any type of proposal, I mean, I've seen the great work that Councilor DeMambro has done. I have a constituent, or a former constituent who owns property in a previous, or lived previously there and owns property in my ward. And then the proposals or the contemplated zoning ideas that we have this evening. And when you had mentioned contiguous, so are we able to, is there ways we could separate them up into smaller parcels or groups of zoning all around the area? Or are we focused on directly?
Yeah.
Or does one have to be a large size and then the other ones can be smaller? If you could just clarify it.
Yeah, no, as I said a little bit earlier, when we're all said and done with this, it's our ball of wax that we can form these districts.
Okay.
Really wherever we want them, if we want them spread out all over town. But there are specific criteria, and one of them being a minimum acreage that can be allowed is 5 acres.
5 acres is the minimum. And then the other question I had is, and bear with me because, you know, after reading the statute and everybody's ideas that I've received, things have blurred a little, so I want to make sure that the folks at home have this clarity as well. What amount of these hypothetical units have to be considered affordable?
Great question, and it's within the guidelines because the specific statute language never even mentioned affordable. And everybody that was paying attention when this was first introduced is, wait a minute, if this is such a housing crisis, how come you guys haven't included affordable housing as a component? You know, because affordable housing in Massachusetts, it's really not that affordable for anybody
I mean,
either.
to me, John, it's a
What's luxury
myth.
housing cost?
It's a myth.
Yeah.
To me.
There's no
I mean,
affordable.
just for reference, I was on my flight back from vacation this afternoon, got here for the meeting, with all these statistics. I went around and looked at Emery Flats, Avalon, Woburn, and Emblem 120. And the standard one-bedroom, one-bath in Woburn ranges anywhere from $24.85 a month to $26.34 a month. So even 20% off of that, under an affordable designation, I don't find many middle-class folks in Woburn being able to afford that type of a rent, especially on one income.
Right.
So that's concerning to me that we're having this statute foisted on us, and they're calling it a multifamily statute, whereas the intention to solve the housing crisis would be to make these units affordable.
Mr. Demers, if I could just say, this is a great question, because if it's a 40R district, in accordance with the guidelines, a community can impose, if they have it on their books already, up to 20% of the units to be affordable. It could go as high as 25%. I believe in the 40R district for Woburn, it is 25% affordable.
So the conditions of a 40R are protected?
Yes, they are, but anything above 20, Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities has to okay that.
Okay.
And then, if a district, right now, as it exists, only allows or requires 10% affordable, that's the max the community would be allowed to impose. And then it's still subject to appeal of a developer.
Okay.
Okay, so I said early on when I read the guidelines, hey, this is a statute that was written by multifamily real estate developers.
Well,
Right.
the interpretation,
Nobody wants to
yeah,
see it, yeah.
the interpretation I'm reading out of this too is somebody who had worked in the legislature for 10 years.
Yeah.
And we constantly were having discussions on how maybe to do a progressive approach at, larger communities having to be responsible for more affordable housing, rather than Woburn, a community like Woburn, who now has done our job
Yeah.
in zoning affordable properties. Now, this is a giant end around 40B and somewhat 40R to add basically another 5% on top of what we've already done. Another question that I have is, I noticed mention of site plan review. So just for everyone at home watching and for here, when we would typically give a special permit, we're allowed to condition a special permit. Right now, my understanding of this statute is that the city council would only have site plan review, so we can say what it looks like.
It's not as good as that. It's site plan review whereby the planning board is the
Not even ours.
site plan approving authority. There's no.
So they're basically just getting the plans and saying, okay.
Yeah, in the guidelines, and just the limitation of site plan review, it's scientifically based now, because there's all kinds of court case decisions on site plan review. So on a special permit, site plan review is restricted to access, safe access to a site. Some architectural design features can
Right.
be controlled for a building. I find that one a little hard to believe, because a lot of planning boards don't practice design review.
Right.
Design review is a result of what's going on in the economy. And you see it, you're a traveler, I think everybody that travels sees what's out there. I was driving in Boston the other day down Mass Pike, and came across a building in Kenmore Square, and I'm like, wow, that's even more radical than I've seen in Seattle or Vancouver recently. I don't know if you've seen it, but the building, it's near Kenmore Square, it goes this way, and then it bends, but it's like an inverted boomerang.
Yeah.
And it's incredible.
So
I never saw it before, and I never quite saw a building designed like that.
and I guess just what I have remaining in terms of comment this evening is, my colleagues to my right here did some work with regards to removing cluster developments from our ordinances because we had concerns. It looks like in some cities and towns, if they didn't have a cluster development ordinance already, they're getting one with this, for certain types of developments. And the other thing I would just ask is that, when moving forward, when we're looking at this, I think macro level across the whole community, I think the best approach would be to look at areas within the radius that if they were to be redeveloped, they're properties that we were hoping to be redeveloped at some point, and not more attractive locations that could have a better use, is what I'm saying, rather than, 8-story apartment buildings or whatever, but locating it onto maybe some blighted commercial areas or older commercial areas that we would, if these were to be developed, those areas that are unsightly now or depressed because of certain manufacturing or commercial businesses that haven't been in there in a while. I mean, we saw that with Fitzgerald Tile leaving, where the next generation isn't really taking over businesses as much as they used to. I think looking in the area, the first slide to me is where I look at that in the sense of, that could be redevelopable property. That could include the MBTA parking lot, because I know we had a previous proposal that had come before us that wanted that kind of intermodal transportation, living, and maybe some mixed use in there. I think that's something that I could get behind, in the sense of, if it's the way we're gonna go about zoning it, look at areas that we find to be blighted that need maybe a lift, if, like you said, there's a key caveat, if a developer wants to come out, or that property owner wants to redevelop that site for this particular use. We're just allowing it by right.
Yeah. I would really just like to strongly emphasize this, that there's a lot more discussion. There's a lot, we have to hear from more people.
Sure.
What the ideal scenario is to adopt, this statute and its requirements. Alderman Campbell brought up Winchester creating their 3A overlay district in their downtown. Lexington just did the same thing. They're an abutting community. They don't have rail going through, but they're an abutting MBTA community. Different criteria, but for Lexington, it's really the only place in their community that meets that criteria, pedestrian-friendly, you know, government services, some retail, whatnot. So there's only certain places you can, you know, locate these in accordance with the guidelines. Woburn's downtown would be one of those areas if we were gonna start spreading this stuff out. You know, we're restricted to provide for at least 75% of all of the units within Anderson and Mishawam. We could create, you know, the dual location if that's what comes out from all of this. Or we could keep it concentrated up in where it is now.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Mr. President.
Counselor DeMambro.
Evening, John. So, you and I have spent some time on this, done a lot of work, along with Council Mercer Bruin, the mayor. One question to start. If we were to take, and I know we're trying to focus on the Anderson Station, and I have a multitude of reasons why I want to keep it in that zone. My colleague, Councilor Demers, has touched base on it. You know, we have a parcel up there that's pretty much got a mix. It's got some high-end buildings up there, it's got some low-end buildings up there, it's got the MBTA station, which plays an important role up there. I also have CCF that's there in the midst of getting permits for 0 New Boston Street, which are, again, more apartments. That could be potentially a part of this, from what I understand. One of my concerns is Mishawam Station, and it was brought to my attention by a local contractor that addressed this rather quickly, almost as fast as we accepted it on the council. So somehow I have a thought that he had some inside information, because he was pretty, he had a lot of information. It's pretty accurate. My concern with Mishawam Station is he right off the rip discussed going into the neighborhoods. He had concerns with going into the residential neighborhoods that have been in existence up there for 60, 70 years. And, lack of better terminology, decimating them with apartments, because he feels you can condense them, it's a better use of the properties, so on and so forth. Tax base, open space, he threw everything at it.
Urban sprawl.
An urban sprawl. I hated it. My way of looking at this is, if the state is going to take and mandate this without anybody's consent and say you have to do this, and in our situation, as in I'm sure other communities, we have 2 parcels that we have to now navigate, 2 stations rather, with parcels around them of a half a mile radius, which is Anderson and Mishawam. What concerns me is, if we have to take and put 75% at Anderson, and we could pixie dust 25% throughout the city, that's dangerous. I think anything we do down at Mishawam Station is potentially dangerous for neighborhoods that are to the southerly end or the south end of the railroad tracks, or the westerly end, whatever you want to say. And I have a great concern with that. I also have a major concern, and I'll start it with a question. The state is willing to take and revoke grants and funding from municipalities, towns, and cities if you don't comply. So my question is, I already know the answer, this is more for the public. What is the state willing to do to support the cities, towns, and communities that allow this? And once we allow it and they come in and they decide to build 600, 2,000, 2,600 apartments, who takes and subsidizes the increase that we're going to need for our schools? Who subsidizes the need for more fire apparatus, stations, police, city sewer, drainage, electricity, so on and so forth, infrastructure upgrades? If we can't mitigate it, and we can't condition it, and we can't ask the state for any money, who shelves all of that burden of expense once these come in. And my final part of that is, once we agree to the 2,600, 55 acres, 50-acre parcel, that we've strategically, you and I have worked this out, Council Mercer Bruin, the mayor, in this particular area. And once we do this, we put in a nice little package, bow and all, and we send it to them, and they approve it, and we think, okay, we're in clear harbors, we're good. Is there a chance they could come back in a year or 2 years or 5 years down the road, move the goalpost and say, we want another 2,600? Or you utilized Anderson, now we want you to utilize, now it's mandatory, you utilize Mishawam.
Alderman DeNambro, you know, with government, anything can happen. But to answer your question about who's supposed to pay for all this impact, within the guidelines, it's a short little, it's not a sentence, it's just a few words put together. Within the guideline language, you, the municipality, the developer, and the state are all supposed to share in the cost of impact brought about by all these multifamily developments. So what it really sounds like in that phraseology that's in the guidelines is that, you know, if we have a massive apartment complex that's proposed,
Excuse me,
600,
just speak into the microphone, thank you.
yeah, 600, 1,000 apartments, negotiating the final action of a community will involve the Executive Office of Housing Community Development. It will involve an approval that addresses the impacts. So we will get some state aid to address the impacts, whether it's increasing our sewer capacity, water capacity, fire stations, schools. I think the impact on schools is such a serious matter with a number of apartments that we're talking about. But again, we're not building 2,631. We're allowing for the potential through an overlay district. How long that takes, it may take 20, 30, 50 years for something like that to actually happen. And we can work our way towards, you know, developing the infrastructure, you know, all of the infrastructure elements that comprise a city. That's what we'd be working on. It's what you constantly have to be working on. The Woburn school-age population is growing right now. It's been drastically losing student count for many years, but, you know,
We just took on 353 kids in the
Yeah.
last school year, so.
But, you know, as I'm really old, so, you know, we had 700-plus kids in our graduating class. I was kind of struck, you know, to hear that Woburn was graduating at some point, I think it was in the 300s now. So there must be, you know, classroom capacity.
So there is a
in the
potential.
schools. I'm not, you know, I don't want to.
No, but there is a potential for the state to come back and say, we will give you a percentage, but they're not going to take and say, in accordance to this, we're going to grant you all of the money for this or all the money for that. And I know developers of my family, third generation in construction. We know how developers operate. My fear is these things start coming in our city that's already been burdened, and we have quite a bit, you know, that we have to take care of along, you know, for our residents and with our residents along with them. And my other thing too that concerns me is they're gonna go after our commercial real estate. And that makes me nervous. In any community, commercial real estate, the tax base is a little bit higher and that helps out our residents. And so those areas are also very important to us.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't like to pay attention to numbers, but numbers are really important. And when you're talking about money, everything costs a lot more than it used to. And you know what? Running a city, any community, you gotta pay attention to the dollars that you're spending. Everybody wants more, and it's all coming out of taxpayer pockets. You know, this stuff doesn't grow on trees. It comes out of people's wallets that have to work for a living, and, you know. So you do have to, when you're running a community, really pay attention to the bottom line of every budget, you know. And we're getting into a period of time, I don't want to get off on this, but we're getting into a period of time that's going to strain everyone, from the federal government and what they grab, the state government and what they grab, and what municipalities have to in order to properly operate.
This isn't going to help, but I thank you.
You know, we're down at ground zero here. We're paying for those kids to go to school. We're paying for the police and fire. You know, we're doing that, and we do need state aid. We need federal aid to help keep things afloat so that we have a civil community, a safe community. You know, that's part of planning, and it's part of everybody here. We want Woburn to be a very safe community. We don't want to be one of those communities that's considered an unsafe place to live. I would not want to live in something like that, ever. You know, so part of my job is to try to, you know, make sure that the revenue's being produced so that we can maintain a safe, civil community that provides for quality public services for everyone.
Excellent. I appreciate the answers. Thank you.
Councilor Campbell and Councilor Bruin.
Just one other question, and also it's something to help answer a question that Councilor Demers had about what control we have. Once again, I just happened to be looking at Winchester, so I'll bring that up again. They put their area, they set their area up into 4 modules. Each module has a different building height, different amount of stories that each one could have. So one was only one module allowed only 2.5 stories of a building, where another module they had was either 7 or 8 stories and different setbacks. So we could do something like that, correct?
Oh, yeah.
As well? And then, as much as this will be by right, we still have a right to say so much setback.
Right, yeah.
And things like that. The height, so much setback, how many stories.
Yeah, exactly. In the draft ordinance they have tonight,
Yeah.
it replicates what the highest density multifamily use allows for in certain districts in the city,
Okay.
40R being the main one.
Okay, good. All right. I just wanted to make
Yeah,
sure.
there's a
Yeah, thank you.
25-foot side setback, 30 front, and, you know, the design features are built into the ordinance itself, you know. So the front of the building has to look like the front of the building, and the rear, all that stuff.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilor Bruin.
Thank you, President Dillon. Again, I just want to remind the people at home, when they hear the number 2,631, that is potentially 2,631 4-bedroom units, which, if you do the math, equals about 10,000 people. So that's where the city within a city came from, right? Many of the cities and towns who have pushed back on this have done so specifically because of, and John, I'm not telling you, I'm telling the people at home, have done so because of their concerns that you've heard expressed by everyone here tonight about fire, police, schools. Also, DPW, building, health, the health department. I mean, the impacts go across our entire, everything in our city. And I don't know how everybody else feels, but I'm not 100% confident that the state would pony up any money. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts is quite famous for unfunded mandates. Our schools right now, there's a mandate right now. We're not getting any funding, right? So these are some of the things I would like to see, Director Cashel, as we're moving along. I know we've been given a template. I know that the folks from Horsley Whitman, basically, although they're working with us, they're really working for the MBTA. They know everything that has to go in there to make it passable. I'd still like to please ask that we keep more of an open mind, trying to negotiate some more terms with this, especially as the number of communities grow that push back on this. And there's smaller communities that probably are in even a worse position than we could be, right, in terms of paying for these things. And I'd also like us to consider, as a community, You know, you showed this particular map, which did seem to be the most, that would probably cause the less impact. And I know we have to talk about all of it, but we keep talking about multifamily housing. It doesn't have to be all multifamily housing. It could be a mix of homes for purchase, maybe smaller homes that are more friendly to the environment and don't cost so much electricity to use. And those, I think the word going around now is accessory dwelling units, right? You could have a whole neighborhood of accessory dwelling units that someone could actually purchase and make it their own and create some generational wealth for their own family, right? So why don't we take lemons and try very hard to make lemonade out of it with some of these other things that we could do. Some of them could be condos that could be for purchase. And then, of course, apartments. That's what planning, and I'm preaching to the choir because I know you're a planner and I know you know these things. We have to have lots of everything or a balance of everything for it to be right. How on earth could the state oppose us for that?
Probably not. I mean, the worst part about this for me is this deadline. You know, for Woburn, it's December 31st, 2024. You know.
But we could ask for an extension.
Right.
People in government ask for extensions all the time. 3 people asked tonight for extensions on permits, right? We could do it.
Yeah, I mean, I've been involved with master plans that take 6 years. For a municipality to plan for the next 10 years,
Right.
6 years. You know, before it's printed, it's almost obsolete. But, you know, we could, as a city, I think as long as we're continuing to work in a progressive manner, you know, planned manner, we could plan for Disney World being in Woburn. if
I
we
don't want
wanna put
Disney
our
World.
heads together. You know,
A lot of traffic
we
at Disney
No,
World.
but we could reform the whole zoning of the city to better accommodate this particular statute. We could redesign the whole city with this thing if we really wanted to. And, you know,
But keeping within the guidelines, right? If we're trying to keep within the guidelines, we could do some of those things that I just mentioned, because they're allowed. It's just the density, and I don't know the particulars, right?
What I'm talking about is no crazier than what they dumped on us. We didn't ask for this, but, you know, here, deal with it. Well, how about we really want to look at how to best deal with this, you know, but we need more time, you know, and it becomes a major master plan update. Matter of fact, the 2015 master plan is only through 2025, which is next year, so. And, you know, that still has to be adopted, actually. It was never adopted.
But Director Cashel, will you look at some of those things and request that the folks at our consultant, MBTA's consultant, will also look at those kinds of things?
I love the idea of thinking outside the box. I mean.
And it's not so
people
much
have-
outside the box, because it's allowed within this MBTA community's law.
Right.
So it is allowed.
Yeah, no, it is. It is.
We just have to figure out the proper densities, right? So it's just, I
The
appreciate
sky- The
it.
sky is the limit. You know, the best-kept secret of the world is what goes on between one's ears. That's how a lot of things happen in this world, that change it in a better way. You know, someone's idea, it comes up, to be in a session like this, you know, and, you know, we could make the best of this. That's the way we should be thinking. We should always be thinking, how can we make the situation best for the city?
Woburn, as you know, has never said we don't want housing.
Right.
We've never said that. We did it way before anybody else.
Right.
It just has to be balanced.
Right.
So there is opportunity to do that.
I always say to people, you know, I know you're against progress and everything else, just don't get in the way of it, because it'll run you over. You know? And so you can fight it, or you can better plan for it. You can really use your noggin and to really create a better world, as long as you know, think about it and, you know, discuss it with people, and everybody collaborates with one another with the goal of trying to come up with the best plan to implement. And, we started it tonight.
Okay.
And maybe we'll end up in a very happy place when it's all said and done.
Anyone else?
Can I make one more comment?
Yes,
Please.
Councilor Campbell.
We know that this just came on, well, last year it came on us, but what we have to remember is that we had legislators that approved this.
Yeah.
And so I think, for me, I want to go find out my legislator, how did they vote? Because that's where we end up, where we can make the difference. And I'm only saying that because what the question was, Councilor DeMambro said, can they come back and say 2,600 more? Yeah, they can, unless we have some legislators that are going to stand up for us and say, no, we're not doing it. Somebody had to approve it, and those are the people that represent us. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you.
It wasn't something just happened. It was asked for a vote, and it was approved.
And I just want to say in a broad sense, it's not only happening in Massachusetts, this is happening in at least 26 states throughout the country. And there's a big plan as part of all of this. And, so it's just not Massachusetts doing this. And,
But we have Worcester, we have Springfield, we have that whole area that isn't developed, that we could easily do housing there, which then would bring in new mom-and-pop businesses to that area, and then revitalize everything in that area, because that used to be a place where there was a lot of commerce.
Right.
So look there, don't squeeze everything in so close to the Boston area, but that's my own opinion.
Along those lines, though, at every planning table I go at, I always preach that, why are we rushing to make Boston the next New York City? New York City is New York City, but, Boston is rather perfect in its size and scale and its suburbs. And, why are we just continuing to pile on top of one another when you have all kinds of smaller cities up and down the East Coast that would like to grow, too? Why don't we grow them into the size communities as Boston and suburbs? Portland wants to grow. Portsmouth wants to grow. We could spread out everywhere. There's plenty of land in this country. But, so many people that are involved with politics, just want to overpopulate their areas. And a lot of this that we're dealing with is to try to maintain the number of congressional seats in Massachusetts, and to maintain the congressional seats in a lot of other blue states. That's what a lot of this is about, because a lot of people are moving to other colored states, red in particular.
Councilor Demers?
Thank you.
No, just one point of clarification that, again, I don't mean to harp on my previous experience as a legislative aide, but one of the scariest things we could ever see in the legislature was when legislation was filed and passed by the legislature that was one page, and they included a paragraph that said something like, this agency is required to promulgate regulations and guidelines to determine if that community is in compliance. And then the next 20 pages of the handout John has given us, which is the statute, is the regulations that the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, in consultation with the Executive Office of Economic Development, MBTA, and MassDOT. So they all got to basically write the law for the legislators. So that is a huge problem up in the general court when it comes to, yes, we have a great idea, let's build more housing around the T's in multiple communities. But then they leave it up to bureaucrats to write the actual law and the regulations. And those folks aren't putting into mind what might happen to Woburn, or where we were with being proactive in getting into safe harbor when it came to Chapter 40B. So it's a negative connotation towards the legislature because it kind of passes the buck to the bureaucrats. But I wouldn't say that our legislative delegation hasn't fought back on this. I know that they significantly did some work to lower some of the restriction or get us some credit towards some of the previous permitting we had approved or before my time. But
State House does play hardball too with.
Oh, they
no,
do play hardball,
with
but this was,
representatives and
this is
senators that
driven,
don't play hardball.
this is bureaucrat driven, not legislator driven.
Yeah.
I just want to.
So if you step out of line, you know, you might find yourself out in the hall like Eddie Markey did back in 1976. You know, no office, in the hall,
Yep.
with his chair and desk.
Councilor Viola, then Councilor DeMambro.
Thank you, Mr. President. John, if we were to pass this, would this help us somehow get to become a gateway community? So that way there would be open to be able to get more revenue or more state aid?
Well, in the way that really works is the more your population is, the more money you receive. So, you know, if you're a small city, 50,000, you're entitled to CDBG grants. You know, if you don't have a certain amount of population in your city, you know, you don't qualify for as much money. But if you're 100,000, you qualify for more money. Woburn is growing. I mean, it wasn't that long ago, we had a population of 32. What is it, up to 40 now, and counting, so.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor DeMambro.
I just wanted to be on the record that, you know, for the public, you know, this is why we're here. I know we're all talking amongst ourselves here, but we're representing the public. And this weighs heavily on every single one of us here, including our planning director, our mayor. Again, this is something that the state had bestowed upon us and said, do it. And we're trying to find the best possible solutions or whatever we can come up with plan to facilitate what they're demanding of us. So I just want the residents in the city of Woburn to realize or understand that we have them in mind. Believe me, we have you in mind, and we hear you.
My old community, Georgetown, that I just was the town planner for 7 years, last night they voted to pass over. What that means, they didn't take any action on this legislation last night. So they want more time. They don't have the resources. You know, the smaller communities don't. They don't have sewer in most of those small communities. And what municipal water they have is provided by their own water resources and very limited. So, you know, to say to a community like Georgetown, oh, you gotta add 750 units of housing, when first 80-degree day in the springtime, everybody's mandated to turn off their spigots. You know, can't water your lawn, you can't water your crops if you have a little garden out back, not legally at least. You know, they don't have water. The North Shore, you would think has plenty of water, they don't. Ipswich River, that whole watershed is just drying up. And, you know, you can't sustain infinite growth, population growth, if you don't have water. It's like air. You kind of need it to live.
That's why this law being passed is, it's amazing to me. It almost sounds like they didn't do their homework. They just thought this thing up, dreamt it, and shot it through to the public and said, this is it, and sent it to all the municipalities and towns without thinking of just how much of a burden this is on everyone. Thank you.
And every town is going through all of this, what we're going through tonight, and some are further along than others, but there's the majority of communities are still wrestling with this as we speak. You know, there were 20 communities that voted on this last night. I don't even know what the tally was. It's probably going to be in the papers tomorrow, maybe the internet. The paper's in business still.
John, did you have more to show here?
Yeah, just real quick. Whatever you guys can bear, I can stand here.
Just make sure you're wandering away from the microphone again there. I'm gonna tie you to it.
You can move the mic,
Okay.
move the mic towards you.
Yeah, here we go. All right. So here, go to map 2. I'll just go through these real quick. We don't have to really get into it. These lots in red or mauve, whatever color you want to see it as, those are the entire lots on the east side of the rail line within the half-mile radius. And there's a caption within the guidelines that any lot that migrates outside of the circle, the half-mile circle, is not to be considered within the circle. So if this is what we have to work with within the half-mile radius on the east side of the tracks, okay? So that's a bigger area. It does stretch out beyond Atlantic Avenue. And a couple of those retail lots on the Target site, that's Target right here. That's the on-off ramp, the flyover. Believe it or not, Raytheon right here, that's outside of that radius because the entirety of that lot is not within the circle. So that's the limitation. All of the lots have to be within the entirety of the radius. And then this map shows those lots bordering that are not entirely within the radius. So all of those yellow highlighted lots are not included in the half-mile radius. And then this is a map showing all of the lots on the east and west side of the rail line, with, again, Anderson being the epicenter of the circle. Any geometry majors out there if I'm using that term incorrectly, please correct me. But those are all the lots, the ones in red. And then this map shows, again, the lots that overlap and the ones in yellow do not, because they overlap. They do not count as being within the guideline area of a half-mile radius. And those are the maps that Jeff Davis came up with, working with his analysts in their planning group. So that's what they came up with just today for this evening's presentation. They were planning on doing this for next week, but I said if you could put pedal to the metal, it'd really help out for tonight. So they did it. So, and then the other handouts that we have is the draft ordinance. I don't know if you really want to go over that tonight. We could leave that for another night.
Your call.
Yeah. And then the other one is the guidelines and the statutory language. Mike really hit on the statutory language really well earlier. But if you want me to get into that, I'm up for it. If you want to take a break and come back, that's fine too.
Mr. President, I think we made it clear earlier that it wasn't going to be a public hearing on a zoning amendment, so I don't think it would be appropriate at this time to take up a zoning amendment, as it wasn't listed in the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for John while we have him?
I hope I accomplished what you guys
No, it was great.
wanted to this evening, and it's the beginning.
Well, before we take the next step, I want to thank you for your effort, thank Mayor Concanon, and thank Councilor DeMambro by taking this challenge on and putting his boots to the ground and get some good work done here. And again, I think we all agree we don't like being told by the Beacon Hill what we need to do, but we're gonna work through this and come up with the best result for our city, so.
It's not the first time, and it won't be the last.
I hear you.
We just have to do the best we can to work with it.
Yes, Councilor Toro.
Mr. President, before we end up opening this up to public comment, I'd like to request a motion for a two-minute recess.
Motion and a second, all in favor? Aye. That is done.
Mr. President, I'll make a motion to return to the regular order of business.
A motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Make a motion that we open the public hearing for public comments.
Second.
So a motion and a second to open the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
If there's anyone here that would like to come forward and speak on this matter, please come to the pedestal.
President Dillon?
Yes.
Did you want to limit this?
On the amount of time? Yeah, thank you for the reminder. Just for the general public, we want to hear from all of you. So if you can just, if possible, keep it to 5 minutes in that range, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you for the reminder, Clerk Higgins.
You're welcome.
How are you today? And one last thing, as you come forward, if you would just write down your name and address so that we can get any paperwork out to you you
It's
may
just for the-
request,
It's just for the
rec-
permanent record.
for the permanent record as well.
And if you could just state your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you. Cynthia Tachi, 16 Lowell Street. What did you say that you cannot put the overlay onto city land? Is there any qualification on that? And so would the city have to develop it if it was put on city land?
John?
Within the statute language and the guidelines, public property has limitations. Some communities early on thought they could just designate, say Home Pond for Woburn. Yeah. Well, it's open space, it's permanent open space, and no one's going to get a permit for developing that. So you can't use wetlands and you can't use city-owned land or state-owned land unless the state entity allows for it. Like the MBTA owns Anderson Station, and they could, by their legislative allowances, allow for development on their property. So that's how it can be negotiated.
Thank you, John.
So the state can do it, but the city...
President Dillon?
Yes.
Question. Traditionally, the public hearings, you have them ask the questions to the council, not a back and forth. I don't know how you want to handle this tonight.
Okay.
Mr. President, can I make a suggestion?
Yes, please.
Maybe if members of the administration and the mayor could take note of these questions, and we'll have answers for these folks come the next hearing.
That's perfect. Thank you. Anyone else from the public who would like to speak on this matter, please come forward. How are you tonight?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for asking. I'm Sal in Auburn Street, new resident. So I was just kind of...
Can you please just sign in there, please?
Yeah, I will.
And you said Sal?
Yeah. Bargoli.
Thank you.
So the only question I was just kind of having when we were talking about the map, particularly it was showing that the hypothetical, it was if people didn't want to develop that land and go further, we've already seen that this was, just a suggestion to make this housing, and now it's being forced on it. What is stopping them potentially from reaching out to these, landowners and just saying, we're going to take it with just compensation, and then this plan has to go forward?
Thank you for your question, and we'll get that answered for you.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the audience like to speak on this matter, please come forward. How are you tonight?
Doing great. How are you, Councilor Dillon? Christopher Sylvia, 13 Bennett Street. Are we asking questions or are we making comments?
You can do both.
So first of all, I do want to say that I think building apartments is a good idea. I think we should do it. I think there's a lot of advantages to apartments from an energy and all that sort of thing perspective. But furthermore, I would expect, given the route we're going down, that, in 10, 20, 30 years, somebody who grew up in one of these apartments or, in these buildings could very well be on this council. You know, this is the future of Woburn that we're talking about, and the state has told us to do it. So, you know, I think we should do it, and I certainly don't think we should get into a bunch of legal action with the state. I appreciate the efforts from Director Cashel about making the district compact, keeping it to the east side to keep the concept of people actually walking to the train station. But I would like to just submit a list of properties that I pulled from the GIS that look vacant to me, and I want to see if there's any reason that those vacant properties could be included in the district, because then we wouldn't be impacting the existing buildings and the existing commercial tax base.
So
So
that's a copy for us.
that's a copy for you.
Make a motion to accept.
Thank you.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Oh, yeah. And then I have a question about,
1 second.
yeah, and then I have a question about,
Just wait till I have to take the notes. Thank you.
then I have a question about other districts for this, So my understanding is that 75% of the district has to be within the radius. The other 25%, can that be anywhere? Do we want to put it somewhere where there is already, you know, the government services and stuff that were described in the contract? And, you know, I would say there's Woburn Center. So I just wanted to ask, can that be anywhere? And are we going to consider Woburn Center for that?
We'll get that question answered for you and get it out to you.
Mm-hmm. All right. But I'd say, one final word is that people my age are really struggling to buy houses or even to buy apartments or condos. You know, plenty of people are moving to Florida, moving to South Carolina, North Carolina, all sorts of places who want to stay in the state, but just cannot afford to. And, Economics 101 is you have to build supply and demand. And, even though, $2,400 a month doesn't sound affordable, if it doesn't get built, then it doesn't matter how much you want to pay for it. You can't get it, and you have to move to South Carolina, whether you want to or not. So I really hope that we can make this happen in this town and bring this new town into existence, like you were saying, Councilor Mercer Bruin. One final question I had on this is, some other towns were considering first floor retail. Is Woburn considering first floor retail for the overlay district? I feel like that would make this more of a town and less of a bunch of apartments.
As well, we'll get back to you on that.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone involved.
Thank you for being in the process. Anyone else? How are you tonight, sir?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you.
My name's Brian Murray, 12 Fletcher Road. My biggest concern is, you said maybe 10,000 people at that spot, right across the tracks. There's new apartments going up over there, 500 units. I'm not sure on the numbers. How many kids coming out of that? Up on Main Street, up on the hill where they just built? How many kids come out of there? You're gonna need 3 new schools.
It's a concern.
It's a huge concern. I don't understand, never mind the traffic. I don't know, I understand how they're gonna jam it down our throat like that, Good luck.
We may
Thank
need
you.
it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public that would like to comment on this? How are you tonight?
I'm good. I'm Sasha Hernandez, 13 Bennett Street. I just want to thank Director Cashel for the presentation tonight and say I like the idea of keeping it east of the tracks. But if you're going to consider another area for the 25%, we'll happily have it in Woburn Center. Or at least you have 2 of us who would. So please consider Woburn Center. We're very walkable. Density is good in Woburn Center. I don't know if density is good elsewhere in the city. I don't know if other people want density, but we do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And anyone else that would like to comment on this? Seeing nobody.
Make a motion that we close the public comment period?
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That passes.
I'll make a
President
mo-
Dillon? Sorry.
Yes.
I just would like to ask when we're going to have a follow-up meeting that might include some more information that people maybe have them. I think I brought this up last time. I understand there wasn't enough time. The council didn't even see any of this except for the one small map, the first one, ahead of time. So I'm hoping the next meeting will be more hands-on so people can see what we're talking about and have some of these things laid out. Could you perhaps work with the planning board director and the mayor and come up with some dates?
Sure, absolutely.
And maybe share them with the council first?
Absolutely.
So people are aware, and if that's okay. I'll make that in the form of a motion if it's necessary. If not,
It's good to make it in the
okay,
formal.
I'll make that in the form of a motion that we come up with, that the president of the council work with the mayor and Director Cashel on some additional public meeting dates for this.
May 27th, the next,
I will leave certainly to you, sir, to work with Director Cashel and the mayor, because I know he's gonna
If
be
I-
reliant
If I
Yes.
may,
upon
Mr. President, to,
Portland working.
we'll be referring this to the Committee on Liaison. So this doesn't have to be a regular meeting. We could have this on a Monday night on Committee on Liaison.
Perfect.
sure.
Right.
I'll second it.
So
The motion is,
withdrawing your motion?
I'll withdraw my
Okay,
motion
thank
because
you.
the liaison's gonna handle it.
I withdraw.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion that the matter is referred to the Committee on Liaison.
Second.
motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes. Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Demis.
Next item on the agenda is NSTAR Electric Company, DBA Eversource Energy, for grant of location to install one new joint pole on Commerce Way. A communication dated today was received from Jacqueline Duffy, right-of-way agent, requesting this be continued to the June 4th meeting.
I'll make a motion that we accept the communication, make it part of the permanent record.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Make a motion that we open the public hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second to open the public hearing, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes. Is there anyone here in the public that would like to speak in this matter? Please come forward.
I'll make a motion that we continue the public hearing to the regular meeting of the council on June 4th, 2024.
A motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes.
Next item on the agenda is a petition by Connoisseur's Product Corp. For a special permit to allow for an alteration of an existing non-conforming use in building for continued use of office, light manufacturing, and warehouse space with parking by constructing a one-story addition at 17 Presidential Way. A communication dated, excuse me one second, dated April 23rd, 2024, was received attorney Joseph R. Tarby. Further communication dated April 24th, 2024, was received from Deputy Chief George Poole of the Fire Department. And further communication dated May 7th, 2024, was received from Greg Rayom of the Assistant City Engineer.
Make a motion that those communications be made part of the permanent record and received.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
I don't know if you want to make, there was a letter to withdraw, there was a letter to withdraw without prejudice,
Yeah,
the motion that,
Same action.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. For the record, Joseph Tabby, Reuben and Redmond, on behalf of the petitioner, Connoisseurs Products Corp. As the city clerk indicated, the petitioner has requested approval of the following special permits to allow for the alteration of the existing non-conforming use in building, for the continued use of the building for office, light manufacturing, and warehouse. The first is to allow for construction of a one-story addition to the existing building, providing, and I'm using net figures, approximately 43,179 square feet of additional net floor area. Total square footage for the building will be approximately 108,023 square feet of net floor area. We also had requested the special permit to allow for reduction in parking, which we filed the request to withdraw, and you just took action on that. And the third request is to special permit to allow for an increase in the loading docks from 4 to 7. As we said at the initial public hearing, the existing use is non-conforming because site plan approval was issued by the planning board on August 13th of 1996. At that time, all of the uses were allowed by right, subject to site plan approval by the planning board. Since that time, the City of Woburn zoning ordinance was amended to require special permits for office space in excess of 15,000 square feet and for light manufacturing in excess of 15,000 square feet of gross floor area. The property is also non-conforming because it contains 4 existing loading docks. So at the last public hearing, we presented revised plans showing compliance with the required parking. At the conclusion of the public hearing, there were 2 outstanding items. One, whether the geotech-style material grass was sufficient for fire truck access, and 2, whether a fire hydrant should be added to the rear of the building, and the council voted to send a communication to the fire department. On April 24th, there was a communication from Deputy Fire Chief George Poole responding to both requests. On the grass paved 2 geotech-style material, Chief Kenton determined that it would be sufficient for fire truck access, and he further requested that the area where the product will be installed be clearly marked with signage, in addition that it be properly maintained and accessible for all 4 seasons. We have some proposed conditions where we've addressed those concerns. On the fire hydrant question, the Woburn Fire Department requires the addition of a fire hydrant to the rear of the building. Yesterday, Matt Corners, our site engineer, spoke with Chief Kenton, who confirmed the location of the new hydrant. So, Matt, do you have a plan that shows that? Yeah. You know, the hydrant is proposed for the rear of the building. Do you want to see that on the plan, or are you satisfied?
What's the will of the council? You good?
We're satisfied.
We're good.
Okay. Okay, so that would conclude our updated presentation. I would like to submit for consideration by the council proposed conditions dated May 7, 2024, for your consideration.
Make a motion that the papers be accepted as a working draft of conditions?
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll just take a minute to read these.
I'm sorry?
We're going to take a minute to read these.
Okay.
good? Everyone's good? Okay.
Okay, so if I could just summarize the conditions and respond to any questions. The first proposed condition is the standard condition 1, which incorporates the site plan of record as part of the special permit. Number 2 requires adequate rodent control prior to the commencement of construction, with monthly reports required to the Board of Health and the Department of Inspectional Services. Number 3 requires, prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant file a snow storage and removal plan with the Department of Inspectional Services. Number 4 requires compliance with dumpsters being in compliance with the Woburn zoning ordinance and Title 8 of the Woburn Municipal Code. 5 requires as-built plans to be provided at the conclusion of the project to the satisfaction of the engineering department and Department of Inspectional Services. In addition, the applicant shall provide interim as-built plans during permitting coordination with the city engineer and building commissioner. Number 6 requires the installation of a fire hydrant in the location shown on the plan as requested by the Woburn Fire Department. 7, the petitioner shall install signage clearly identifying the area where the grass pave tool will be installed. And condition 8 requires the petitioner to ensure that the access road as shown on the site plan is properly maintained and accessible 365/24 with all snow removed. And then, since this property is a non-conforming use and structure, the usual finding is also required as part of the special permit.
Questions? Yes, Councilor Braun.
I just wanted to, first of all, thank folks from Connoisseurs for their patience to get us to this one last meeting, and thank you for sending these conditions earlier. I take no exception to them. In fact, they're quite thorough and everything that we need. So I'm hopeful the council will consider moving this tonight.
Thank you, Councilor Braun. Any other questions? Seeing none, what's the will of the council?
Make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this matter? Please step forward. Seeing no one.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Make a motion that the special permit be granted with the 8 proposed conditions and 1 finding dated May 7th, 2024.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
That passes. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your business, and thank you for investing in Woburn, sir.
Ditto.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is Hannaford and Dumas Corporation for a special permit to allow for construction of a 2-story addition, approximately 6,960 square feet of additional gross floor area with overnight parking of 1 box truck for the reduction of parking at 24-26 Con Street.
Councilor Tarby.
Yes, I'm going to be requesting a further continuance of this public hearing to the first meeting in June, but I also wanted to give you an update that I received from the engineer, that he's working through the proposed site design. He's finished the existing condition site plan showing grades, utilities, et cetera, going through the stormwater requirements, and working on the revised site plan, and they expect to submit everything to the city engineer's office on or before May 17th.
Any questions for Attorney Tarby? Yes, Councilor.
Yeah, Attorney Tarby, is that, the issue they were having with the getting the large trucks into the lot without bothering the neighbors, is that gonna be incorporated in this?
Yes, they have worked on that. I can't recall exactly what they did, but I think they created a wider swing out onto Con Street, because the trucks come in from the other part of Con Street and go out the other way, so.
Okay, so that will be part of what we're gonna
Yeah,
see.
once we have the plan ready, we intend to provide it to you as the counselor of that ward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Nothing else, Councilor Papalato?
Good.
Anyone else?
Make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second to open the public hearing. If there is anyone who wants to
It
step
needs to be
forward.
called to vote.
Yeah, we need to vote.
Oh, thank you. Motion and a second.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Seeing if there's anyone in the public that wants to come forward to speak on this matter. Seeing no one.
I'll make a motion that we continue the public hearing to the regular meeting of June 4th, 2024.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Next item on the agenda is the Woburn Planning Board to amend the Woburn zoning ordinance for murals. A communication dated April 24th, 2024 was received from Casey Haggerty, the Economic Development Manager, regarding requests to leave to withdraw without prejudice.
I'll make a motion that we receive the communication, make it part of the permit record.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Make a motion that we open the public hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes. If there's anyone in the public that would like to speak on this matter, please step forward.
I'll make a motion that the public hearing be closed.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
I'll make a motion that we grant the leave to withdraw without prejudice.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes. Thank you.
Next item under committee reports is the appointment of Kathleen A. Lucero to the Board of Trustees of the Woburn Public Library. A committee report was received, ought to pass.
Make a motion the committee report be adopted.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Committee on Public Safety and License on the petition for renewal of livery license for Boston Livery Service, Inc. at 165 New Boston Street, Suite 275. A committee report was received, ought to pass.
Make a motion that the committee report be adopted.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Under Communications and Reports, a communication dated April 24th, 2024 was received from Ann Spicer, Executive Director of Woburn Retirement Board.
Make a motion the matter be received and placed on file.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Next item on the agenda is a communication dated May 1st, 2024 was received from Richard M. Haggerty, State Representative, 30 Middlesex District, Woburn-Reading, regarding House Budget Fiscal Year 25 funding for the City of Woburn.
Make a motion the matter be received and placed on file.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Next item on the agenda is a communication dated May 1st, 2024 was received from His Honor the Mayor, Michael P. Concanon, regarding the reappointment of Megan Meany to the Board of Trustees for the Woburn Public Library.
Make a motion the communications received and made part of the permanent record.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Also make a motion that the matter be referred to the Committee on Personnel.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Next item on the agenda, a communication dated April 25th, 2024 was received from His Honor the Mayor, Michael P. Concanon, regarding the reappointment of John Sawyer to the Woburn Board of Cemetery Commissioners.
Make a motion the communications received and made part of the permanent record.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Make a motion that the matter be referred to the Committee on Personnel.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Next item on the agenda is a communication dated May 1st, 2024 was received from His Honor the Mayor, Michael P. Concanon, regarding appointment of Edmund F. McGrath to the Woburn Board of Cemetery Commissioners.
Make a motion we receive the communication, make it part of the permanent record.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Make a motion that the matter be referred to the Committee on Personnel.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Next item on the agenda is an order to review the non-union department head salaries.
Make a motion the matter be referred to the Committee on Liaison.
Second.
A motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Next item on the agenda is an order that the Committee on Finance meet to discuss the school department budget and this request to be a committee as a whole,
I'll make a motion that the matter be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Second.
The motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
A motion to adjourn, and the second, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes, and we are adjourned at 9:05.